I would like, if I may, to take you on a strange journey.
Hello, world. It is Antonio of the Cultworthy Cinema Podcast, bringing back the show one of my favorite people, one of my favorite podcasters, digital creators, influencers, I should say. I got Craig Macneil of the Craig and Friends podcast. Welcome back.
Well, thank you very much, Antonio, and let me return such wonderful, loving wishes as well for your content and such, and also the depth and breadth of your output. This show, the Back to the Balcony, etc., tackling the hard issues that the people need to deal with at this time and every other time, much like the cop and a half fight. And I'm just going to turn my level up just a touch. I see that there we go. How's that on? Yeah, wow, look at that. Oh, so much better. Anyhow.
Now you're booming. I mean, I could do it for you on my end, but you are a master, so you are helping me out.
I see that waveform. I'm riding that waveform. But thank you. It's a delight to be back, and I look forward to taping one of mine with you. Yes, on Craig and Friends.
I mean, I will always jump in on your show. It's such a great show. And, you know, the fact that you are, let's say, international man of mystery at the moment, bouncing from here to there in the Craig cave.
Yes, yeah. I'm in an undisclosed location at the moment, yes.
Which I am actually quite envious of, you know, because, I mean, Utah may as well be an undisclosed location. I see all the crazy things that are going on in the world, and I just know that, like, no one cares about Utah right now. We got enough crazy shit going on with all the Mormon stuff and air quality. You know, it's funny, like, during COVID, a bunch of people moved here, and, like, 2 years later, a bunch of them moved back out because Salt Lake City is just so bad with air. People moved back to Los Angeles after the air quality was here, so... Yeah, I feel kind of
people made
here.
A lot of weird moves. Like, I'm going to uproot my life entirely because things aren't already weird enough. I think I'm making the right decision for the rest of my life. Yeah. Not that there's anything wrong with Utah, but it's just people who had no idea about certain lands, whether it be Oregon, Washington, whatever, they would just move there. They're like, it's great. Anywhere would be great if you just moved for excitement, you know?
Move for excitement, or like, you know, the rats leaving a sinking ship motif, you could say, is going on too, and then they realize they don't like this ship they've moved to, and then they destroy the housing market, blah, blah, blah.
Oh, right.
We're just a weird species, man, and I think you and I have been very vocal about that lately.
Yes,
on our,
very much so, yeah.
On our social media, on our content, and that's kind of why, you know, I wanted to have this conversation with you, you know? As creators, as, I don't want to say that we're influencing anybody, but there is like this unwritten contract you have to sign when you put yourself out in the world, whether it's a podcaster or a YouTuber or a TikToker, that if you choose to put yourself out there and your opinion, you're signing this unwritten contract that you're opening discourse with the world. And can you handle it? Or are you just going to shut your comments off and pretend that nobody can get to you? And I feel that that mentality has kind of affected not only the opinions of people that are creating, but even more damaging the people that follow them, because they're not seeing what consequence of opinion or the courage to stand behind it actually looks like. And that's where you just get a lot of this yelling and noise across the channels, right?
Yeah, definitely. And also the ability to withstand bracing, chilling comments or attacks on your personage or persona, especially because sometimes it's just what people imagine one to be. I mean, I remember getting a lot of heat and hassle from my Vanderpump Rules podcast, which was the first one. I co-created the first one, but like I didn't know about the reality TV show level of hatred that people, now I'm familiar with that, but then it's kind of the same as the political one. A lot of times it's malformed, half-baked opinions and a lot of aggro, but I guess that could be said about almost any position of any kind, anywhere, at any time.
Right. Well, and also the thing too is that I don't know. Like the perception of the audience is something that I really learned about over the last 5 years of doing this show is the fact that this isn't scripted, but there are people out there that think that you and I have already planned everything we're about to talk about.
Oh
And I
yeah,
think
yeah,
there is a commitment to an idea that you put out there on a podcast, but there's nothing wrong with changing your idea or your perception or not marrying yourself to an ideology. And I think that's crucial. I think that when people get mad at someone backpedaling a comment, then we are completely destroying the whole idea of discourse because that's what debate is for. I'm supposed to debate somebody, and hopefully, my knowledge of a subject can help them reevaluate their position on something, and vice versa. But
yeah.
this idea where it's like you said something 10 years ago, it means you're locked into it, and an apology doesn't mean anything. I think that's a harsh reality of what we do as independent creators. We're not held to contracts by anybody. Like we're not being having a salary threatened by something we said. We're doing this on our
Right.
own. So any
Yeah, yeah.
accountability is all on us.
Well, yeah, that's true. And I mean, I think like you said, the contract, the implicit contract is also to, if not stand behind everything you said, to acknowledge that you had said it.
Right.
To harken back to the things I was talking about when I first started that show, with the co-created that show, we were very, very mean about the people on the show. We were very funny, but we were goofing on them in a rather intense way. And then I realized, well, that's not really like the best thing to do. Like, karmically, like you goof on them, but like not to be mean.
Right.
And then there was blowback from that. But you realize, like, okay, you have to say I did say those things,
Mhm.
and cop to it when those people were actually on the couch with me. So if you're going to say something, you should be prepared to cop to it if it's a person or whatever. If if you're challenged on something, to even if you've changed your opinion on it, admit or acknowledge and own the fact that you've said something.
I agree. And you and I are specifically in, I'm going to say, a lane of content creation that I'm not going to say it is. It's oversaturated. Podcasting has become this medium that anyone can do. Doesn't mean that anyone should, but they can. And I support their right to do it.
Yeah, of course.
But what it does do is it does create a lot of noise. And one of the things that I've been finding myself doing over the last 2 years for sure is when I started the podcast and I started getting like into podcasting networks and things where you share people's content, you kind of boost each other up. I started finding myself having reservations that there were podcasters with opinions and beliefs that were totally contradictory to mine. And I had scruples about sharing content that
Yeah.
I didn't agree with. So I would back out of these networks and just realize, you know what? I would just rather do this solo so I can own what I believe in. And if
Yeah.
people want to listen to me, great. If they don't have to. And I was starting to get that same kind of advice from people that I considered mentors in this industry. It's like, well, don't be too political on your podcast because you want a wide audience. You don't want to split your audience down the middle. And I played with that for a minute. And I'm like, this doesn't feel right. Like, I don't want people that I don't agree with to feel like they're obligated to listen to me or even worse, respond. It's just a better place to be who you are, and the audience you want will hopefully find you.
Well,
And
I think
feel
that's the key to it too. Is that would it be a show that you want to listen to? Is basically the thing, and I don't know if you're talking about stuff at length for any amount of time. It's kind of hard to keep it away from divisive topics, particularly when you're talking about film, because film is about something generally. Even the ones that aren't about something, the frivolity is what it's about. But when you're talking about the underpinnings of something, or maybe how something resonates to you as a sort of as relates to, especially the thing we were talking about leading into this discussion, or
Indeed.
the idea for this. Someone watches the Parallax View, for instance, they're going to have a definite opinion. Or if they don't, they're like, I don't know. I don't know if I want to talk to them.
Right. Already taken my films off my list. So let's get into
I figured
that.
go for like the big game and then save Power for later.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So
I've never seen Power, by the way. I've been meaning to, and it's only been 40 years, so maybe one day.
oh dude, I love it. It's
around
behind
to
me
it.
on the shelf. A very
Oh, nice.
underrated Lumet film. So here is what kind of sparked this idea, and especially with you, because one of the things I appreciate about you and your show is that you are so embracing of not only your identity, but the identity and how important identity is to the social circle, right? People who don't feel maybe comfortable and safe in the environment they live in, so they'll move to someplace more accepting. But they can also find people like you who embrace and promote the idea of identity, and that it's okay and that it should be okay to be different and have different opinions than what, let's say, mainstream media says. And what got me on this idea to talk to you about this subject in particular is Superman. The new Superman movie came out, and I was hearing stuff about it before it even hit the theaters about, oh, Superman's woke, Superman's nice, Superman's an immigrant. What did they do to our all-American Superman? And I had to take a step back. I'm like, dude, Superman was always an immigrant. He was always an alien. And
literally an alien.
Literally an alien.
Undocumented, frankly.
And yes, maybe he fought for truth, justice, and the American way, but he also protected the world, not just America. Just because he lived in Metropolis didn't mean that it was Metropolis or fuck off, right?
Yeah.
And hearing this discourse about Superman, I'm like, well, let me see for myself. And I went and saw it. And okay, as a film, as a comic book movie, I don't know. It's just not my lane. But I was impressed by the fact that the creators behind it were brave enough to say, I want to bring joy and acceptance and fun back to the superhero genre and get away from all this moodiness and broodiness that we've been doing for the last 10, 15 years. And it tackles political statements and opinions of genocide, of invasion, of war, of acceptance that I think maybe spoon-fed to the audiences, but people that recognize it now from their media intake and from the news, they get exactly what this movie was doing. And that was the point. It's like, this isn't the first film to do that. Since film's begun, people have been putting their political statements and messages in it in guise of entertainment.
Especially in science fiction, which you could kind of group superhero films into if you wanted to. But anything that is outside, or let's say rather that embraces fantastical notions in order to tell a story, yeah, it's the perfect container. And also, I don't know, is it the origin story again? Because I noticed that there's this bad habit of repeating the origin. Maybe I'm thinking of the Spider-Man films. So that's how I like to refer to them. But I haven't seen any new. I mean, the last Superman I saw was probably Quest for Peace. So
underrated.
Yeah, I like all the bonus footage with Nuclear Man 1.
Oh, dude. And the old Nuclear Man that looks like Frankenstein.
Yeah, it's good stuff. The stories about Superman 4 too were pretty great. But yeah, I remember seeing this stuff about, oh, it's so woke, it's this, it's that. And then I see that Paul Verhoeven has announced that he's going to make a new version of Basic Instinct that's non-woke. And I thought, well, the original's non-woke. What the fuck are you talking? Like, what's going to happen in this one? You creep. And then it's not supposedly even a remake of Basic Instinct. So I thought, so once again, Paul Verhoeven has a vague concept of something vague that is vaguely erotic and vaguely edgy that he gets a huge paycheck for.
Yeah. And Verhoeven's on my list for different reasons.
I'm sorry, not Verhoeven. Forgive me. I'm sorry, Esterhazy.
Esterhazy. I was going to say Esterhazy is the one who's doing on that. Yeah.
No, Verhoeven, I have no dismissive, hostile things to say about, but Esterhazy I certainly do.
Oh yeah, me too. So yeah, they don't do the origin in Superman. James Gunn came out and said, he's like, you know what? I don't need to see another Batman origin, Spider-Man origin, or Superman origin. We should know it by now, so they just throw you right in the movie. So yeah, science fiction is a perfect example because the one thing that I was thinking about, and is going to go into this conversation later, is like Star Trek, how everyone was up in arms about Star Trek being woke. I'm like, it was woke from the beginning before woke was a thing.
Yeah.
Like Roddenberry was a goofball, but he had an idea of like, in the future, we're not only the melting pot for the country or the world, but for the universe.
Yeah.
And the Federation of Planets essentially is like a socialized program for all the galaxies of planets to get together, share resources, share intelligence, share technology. And because it was pretty to look at and was fantastical and all this sci-fi action and Kirk was very suave and stuff, it really kind of covered up the underlying tone of what that was about. And then thinking about to like what the origins were, Desilu Productions. Like Lucy was a target for McCarthyism. And here
Yeah.
we are with a
Yeah.
Star Trek series that she produced, and
This
it's
is wild.
basically painting that picture for audiences to either recognize, learn from, or just be entertained by. It covered so many gambits, and it still does.
Yeah, definitely. And what is the premise here? I might get it wrong, but there's one where there's people who are they're either half black or white, or they're half gray and blue. I can't remember. But so racism is tackled in a number of different ways, not least the just ever present presence of George Takei and Nichelle Nichols, and also how there's nothing really made of that. It's not like a thing. They are just there.
They're just there. They're just a part of the crew. It's not DEI. It's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
affirmative action. Exactly. And all the barriers that it broke in just the few seasons that it was on, and then again in the movies, and then just how it's continued on with all these different adaptations and different series and different films. But again, like that, I think is very clever because you and I are very progressive people. I was thinking about this that you see progressives be more fluid and pliant with their creativity to encompass all audiences than you do, let's say, conservative media. Like conservative creators, they have a very straight channel that goes one direction. It's meant
Yeah.
for one audience. And the creative side of progressives, I think, is well, we can speak to everybody, and anyone that wants to play in our pool can, but we can still hold our values sacred. And I've always wondered that. It kind of goes back to, I think it's Vonnegut that had a quote, something like, to create art, you must have a soul that grows. And I think
Hmm.
that's why progressives generally are more artistic and creative, is because we're always trying to grow that. And I don't want to speak too poorly about the conservative mindset because there are some
That's
people who
okay.
are
Go for it.
well, I mean, there are some people that are definitely upset with what's going on, but at the same time, the tribalism keeps them in a certain block, and
Well,
they're
if
afraid
you
to
look at
grow.
the artistes that represent each side, let's take a handful, the ones that are the most vocal adherents to the current administration. We got Kid Rock, always been trash.
Hulk
James
Hogan.
Woods must have had a major head injury at some point in the 80s. There's a great clip on the making of Videodrome, or in the commentary, but probably in the making of on the Blu-ray, where he talks about how nice it would be if the United States had some kind of subsidized program for filmmakers and young artists. And then when you read any of his tweets or hear any of his garbage from the last 20 years, you can't quite believe it's the same person
Yeah.
in there. But then, okay, so he's still a great actor. Vince Vaughn, terrible. All the comedians are terrible. And I say, I want to do air quotes because the thugs that go out there and say hate speech basically as comics, and I like edgy comedy, you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
a lot of the stuff, I think these guys are terrible. I watched a clip on Rogan sometime after the inauguration, or maybe right before. It doesn't matter. They were talking about Kamala and how she made the grand error of not going on that show because then they couldn't say that she couldn't put a sentence together, you know.
Mhm.
But anyway, these guys were on there, and the way that they were talking about her, I thought that because he does MMA shows, and nothing against MMA fighters, I thought that these guys must be fighters because the way that they were talking. And then I found out they were technically comedians, and I thought, wow, we're in a different age from George Carlin. And George Carlin would be one of the more progressive thinkers of all time. The one confuser is David Mamet. I don't know what's wrong with him because he's a terrific talent. At least I don't know. I haven't seen anything of his recently, but
Yeah, me either.
he's out of his fucking mind.
Well, I mean, I think there has to be something that comes with the celebrity, right? Like
Oh yeah,
you become obsessed with your own existence and your own world and your own creations, and that is one of the things you see with. I mean, it's the same as the tragic artists of the old days that would kill themselves, cut their ears off, stuff like that. Like again, with great creativity and great artistic genius can come some mental opportunities, I could say.
yeah,
And that
that's
might be it.
true.
That might be
Yeah.
it. But it is hard because I mean, that's the other thing too, is that when we talk about the films that we're about to talk about that have a political message, it's so much harder to entertain someone while putting your message across, but not being so upfront about it that you're going to come off as like a biased creator. And
Mhm.
especially when a lot of these movies came out, let's say in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, we were dealing with the blacklists. We were dealing with a lot of
Yeah.
McCarthyism that was going on. You had to be careful. Some of our favorite movies, the screenwriters never even got credit because
Right.
they were blacklisted and they had to use dummy writers to take the credit for them. So this isn't anything new. I think that when we go to audience reaction and critic reaction, I think it's very fun to go back and see how political a movie really is and how it was lauded at the time by certain critics and audiences. And then there is a reevaluation 20, 30 years later when people actually get it.
Yeah. Yeah, or when something is very very acclaimed and then kind of discarded later on. But I don't know how that is for the political films, because the first one that comes to mind in terms of how, let's say, each side of the fence in the olden days, because now it's a totally different landscape. But I wonder what Republicans and rather, as opposed to Democrats, would have thought of All the President's Men. You would have had to have been a very devoted Nixon loyalist, like what's his name, Ben Stein, with his speechwriter. You should look up sometime and see what he says about the great travesty of Nixon being ousted, and all the things he was going to do. But I wonder, because it was such a huge hit and it was such a piece of the culture, how everyone of different parties felt about it. Because I feel like it was generally considered a disgrace what happened.
Was considered a disgrace what happened, dramatized extremely well in that film with, two of the most
Oh yeah,
charismatic actors of that generation. And that's what I think sometimes upsets the side that is being affected the most by a political thing is when you get
yeah,
Redford and Hoffman to essentially paint the picture of all the terrible things that happened and people love it. It is kind of a
yeah.
slap in the face. And there's not a lot pointing the other direction in film history.
No, you get a lot of stuff like on the extreme end, Kirk Cameron
Oh,
or
dude.
Scott Baio making garbage.
Willie
Although,
Ames.
yeah, Willie Ames, exactly. Did you ever see how he did a makeover and he said he spent his last bit of his savings on it, and he to look like Sammy Hagar,
Yeah.
to look like the Red Rocker. So yeah, you got Willie Ames, you got Kirk Cameron, Baio, and there was,
Christy
I'm trying
Swanson
to think,
too. That was a hard one for me.
which one?
Christy Swanson was a hard one for me.
Oh, I can imagine. You know what is really irritating me now? Neil McDonough is banging the drum once again about
Oh
how he was
yeah, dude. Don't
he
get
was
me started.
blacklisted for, in my estimation, not doing what he contractually obliged himself by signing a contract to do from a script that was already written and handed to him.
Yep.
But now he's making hay out of that again. Now this is the perfect time for him to do it. But if you look at conservative creators, I mean, Tyler Sheridan does not say one way or the other. Some people think that he is actually progressive, who's sort of, mining this area or rich vein of conservatism. But his stuff, I mean, Tulsa King, which I was enjoying as like it was something to watch while I ate my lunch kind of show,
Mm.
until Stallone finally revealed himself after denying for years and years. That one really, that I was very upset actually with that one, because he'd lied for so many years.
Yeah, I mean, it's a hard time for people like us that were like raised with these stars, raised with these icons, and seeing them flip like that. And I'm at the point where it's like, I'm not going to let it bother me. I'm just going to remember the happy times, right? I'm going to go to my
Yeah.
happy place where I didn't have to know all of their political opinions. Cause like now, political opinions of these creators, actors, directors, and screenwriters, for some people, that means more than the work. And you used to be able to separate the artist from the opinion. And it's
Yeah.
become so much harder these days. I agree with you.
I can still enjoy a James Woods movie. I don't know if I've seen anything new, but then again, he says that he's blacklisted. There's a curious thing about Oppenheimer in that he said, well, he didn't. He either took his name off of it, even though he's an executive producer, because he didn't want his name to cloud the achievement for everyone. And then or maybe he said that the rest of the creative team asked him to.
Mhm.
Either way, because he's the one that he owned the property, so therefore he made a lot of money from it. So whatever story he's telling about poor me, I had to take my name off of it, he did that as a calculated market decision
Mhm.
anyhow. So I don't know. And also, see, again, there you go, a very bright man. He figured this story, the real cheerful knee slapper of Oppenheimer would be something of value. Of course, it depends on who made it and all that. But anyway, a Woods movie I can watch anytime. Although I have to rewatch Salvador because
Yeah.
I'd be curious to. I'm pretty sure it's a fairly left-leaning film, and Oliver Stone wrote and directed it, and he's notoriously gone completely kooky over the last 20 years.
And it's interesting that you bring up Stone, because I was about to drop Milius, where like
Mm.
Milius was the type of, let's say, I'm not gonna say warmongering conservative of the 80s, but he kind of was.
I'd say that's not too far off.
It's not too far from the truth. Undertone propaganda, but he turned it into entertainment. Yet that entertainment is still talked about to this day without, let's say, putting it in a certain political lens. It just was what it was. There was like that machismo of the 80s that was able to cover up whatever political undertones that there were. I wanted to ask you about Paddy Chayefsky, man, because that's one that I think is really fascinating as a screenwriter. Like, I feel like there's no writer that was more prophetic about all the different political and sociological things that we're seeing currently than Paddy Chayefsky. I want to start with Marty. Like, Marty predicted this whole male loneliness epidemic that we're talking about. Toxic males, toxic friends, the self-love thing that we've been seeing over the last 30 years. Yet when they watched it back then, it just seemed like this, kind of lonely hearts, oh, I'm a dog, you're a dog comedy. But you watch it in today's lens, you're like, we may as well be listening to the people that the Tate brothers are complaining about in a hour and 20-minute movie that won an Oscar.
It's funny, that just reminded me of a completely outside this scope movie called Dogfight, which is a good one to check out sometime.
Dude, I screened Marty and Dogfight as a double feature at my cult movie.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because I feel like they belong together.
They do. No room for Rat Boy, though. Sorry, Sandra Locke. Also, of course, Network. I mean, there's never been a more prescient film, although Shock Treatment in many ways is as well, even if accidentally. But I always feel that doesn't matter. It's whatever factors came into play. Chayefsky, the Hospital also.
Yep.
Really?
Like Hospital, it talks about predatory healthcare. It talks about toxic masculinity, the anti-science movement, where
that's true.
You've got her bringing a shaman into the hospital room and denying healthcare. Like, there's so many things in that film that are pretty much things that we're talking about with this whole Maha movement.
Yeah. Disturbing stuff. Michael Crichton as well.
Right.
Really. I mean, it may be a socio-political way, because Looker is certainly pretty bang on for various aspects right now, as well as, I don't know. I can't specify another specific one because Runaway is a little off, but...
I mean, you could talk about AI with Runaway maybe a little bit, but...
Yeah, a little bit. But also AI with Looker. You know what I mean? Like, Looker really has a lot in there, and James Coburn is a sort of Peter Thiel type, but far more charming. But Chayefsky, outside of Altered States, what are a couple others of his?
So the Network, The Hospital, Marty, the film Americanization of Emily, which was really kind of... It's like a prophetic film about spin doctoring military and political mistakes.
Gotcha.
So very like wag the dog kind of stuff. And I feel like we're dealing with that right now with all the Epstein files and all the things that are going back and forth with these conflicts overseas and Israel. Like, the spin doctoring, the worst part about it is it's not any good. And that's what Americanization of Emily is essentially about, is like, are we idiots? Do you think we're idiots? I mean, the idiots are the loudest ones in the room, but the rest of us are just going, what? Like, you really expect us to believe this? And he saw this 60 years ago. It's just, it's such an interesting thing to go back and watch films that were made off of his scripts or hear him talk in interviews. And essentially, I want to say that he was probably a nihilist, and he was able to be the most honest about what he was writing about, because he really didn't have a side. He was able to be satirical about everything that he saw that was wrong, and now it's just in our face.
Ken Russell classified him as a miserable old bastard, basically, or that's how he characterized him, rather, I meant to say. But
coming from Ken Russell.
Yeah, exactly. Cranky. Two cranky men. I was just thinking about Walker, the Alex Cox movie I
Alex
just saw
Cox's
again
Walker, 100%.
recently. And Walker's a fantastic movie, and I like how it uses the anachronistic stuff towards the end. And for those who haven't seen it, Ed Harris, in one of his greatest performances ever, which is saying something, and it's a story about Nicaragua. I can never pronounce it right. Nicaragua, shot in Nicaragua while there was activity happening in the 80s with the Sandinistas. So that's a remarkable film that also opened my eyes to the whole history of Walker, the real man. And Alex Cox is an inherently political filmmaker. Repo Man is political, even though it's not on the surface necessarily, but very much like in the tonality. And while it's talking about all the socioeconomic things going on, the televangelists, the FBI agents who are all blonde. There's a lot of those little touches in there, and also again the socioeconomic stuff and the indignities forced upon people because of capitalism.
Well, and the denial of accountability for what's going on sociologically. Like at the end when his
Yeah,
friend gets shot in the liquor store and he's like, I blame society, you know? It's true. It's like there is this American sense of unaccountability that bleeds into creation, that bleeds into movies and art. And I think it's hilarious that um I think we'd be such a better society if we could all just accept the fact that we're not perfect and that we fuck up all the time and it's okay to fuck up. Just admit it, instead we're always looking to blame other people on it. Yeah. And you had Alex Cox on your show, and that was a great conversation. I was very jealous of
thank
that
you,
one.
thank you. I just got to see him at the BFI in London, which
Nice.
is phenomenal. And I got to. I'm going to post a clip because they posted the whole chat outside. It was a thing for Movie Drome, the show that he hosted,
Mhm.
and so they talked about the genesis of that, and then they would show clips of, say, his intro to Terminator, where he didn't like the film that much, but he doesn't bash it. He just sort of talks about certain things in a way, and he's very opinionated. But they would show the clip and then they'd talk about it. And so the YouTube version has everything except the clips and the post movie drum chat about his new film, upcoming film, Old Souls. So he was asking the audience some questions. And so I chimed in with something and I'm going to be posting that. So that was a delight to be able to go to and also to meet him in person because we'd met over the phone. Also, I got to tape a chat with him for the upcoming long in the making movie club for To Live and Die in LA, which is going to be a very long one because of my love for the film.
You've been talking about that one for a while.
A long time, yeah. Well, I taped a chat with him about a year and a half ago about Robbie Mueller because, yeah, I wanted to talk to someone who knew him, and of course, it's an indication rather of how beloved Robbie Mueller was to his collaborators. That was like a no brainer. Like, absolutely, yeah, I'll talk to you about him.
I wanted to get to another topic too because we've talked about films that definitely had a specific audience, political movies like All the President's Men, Network, Hospital, but I think one of the biggest ones that people often don't recognize as a political movie, but some are because of what it's been doing lately with its TV stuff, is Star Wars.
Oh
There's
yeah,
there's this great series that James Cameron did where he was like interviewing people in the industry about science fiction and what it means. And his conversation with George Lucas was fascinating because they were both going to the same point where it's like we're talking about a small scale group of rebels who are technically underwhelming compared to the Empire. Yet they
yeah.
still win through, well, let's say temporarily win because the Empires always build themselves back up after they've collapsed. But he was saying that, like, okay, well, this is like the Mujahideen or the Viet Cong, and that's where I was writing it from, where like the empirical state is trying to absorb everything in the galaxy through this like authoritarian control, and the rebels fight back. And anyone that was alive during the time of this movie, either theatrically or on VHS or on cable, you cannot help but get energized by the idea of like, yes, we're taking on the Empire. Yet half the country right now is all on board for an empirical state. And they can't understand how you can be a Star Wars fan and not see what's going on in this world.
Well, there's some people it'll be clear who I'm referring to when I said you realize that some of these people cheered at the end of Inglorious Bastards, and they don't see the parallels here.
Right.
I mean, I'm sure at least some of them are like, man, that sucks. I'm glad that didn't happen like that. But yeah, it's very bizarre how people don't see certain things. And I think it's incumbent upon all of us to like look at stuff from not from both sides, but like, to think, well, what's my blind spot? Because I'm a person, so I must have some kind of blind spot where I give a pass to something that maybe I shouldn't, or overlook something, or maybe a comment, like kind of something that is in a film talking about maybe either us or a type of line of thinking that we might embrace that we maybe wouldn't want criticized, but I think it's imperative to at least entertain that.
Right. And I think the funny thing is that like if you watch the first 3 Star Wars movies, even the prequels, which were a little bit more on the nose with their politics, it still kind of blanketed the audience, right? Where no one was too
Yeah.
uptight. But as Star Wars has gotten a little bit more right in your face political, especially with this Andor show, essentially calling out everything that we're seeing now with xenophobia and genocide and
Yeah.
authoritarian control. Now people are complaining about Star Wars. And again, just like Star Trek, I'm asking them, like, do you not remember what all the other films were about? Like,
Right.
why now? And I think it is. I think it is because we have changed the, I'm going to say, American language of what politics was. Where back in my day, and I sound like an old man yelling at clouds now, like you could have a conservative neighbor and you could have a bunch of liberals on the same street. And the whole goal was, let's not talk about politics. Let's go do fireworks. Let's go do this.
Yeah.
But now
Yeah.
it's like before people even have a conversation with each other, it's almost like someone in
Yeah.
that group is going to ask, what's your politics? What's your politics? What's your politics?
Well, they might not even have to ask, though. That's the thing.
They're wearing it. They're wearing it on their head.
Yeah, someone has a hat, or it's like someone says, like expresses some level of concern for someone who's not in their immediate family or ethnic group.
Right. Just because you said that, it makes me go back to one of my favorite cult musicals of all time, The Apple. You've seen The Apple, I'm sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Of course, love that.
You've got the BIM mark on your forehead.
Yes,
Yes,
that's
it's
right.
a biblical reference, and people are trying to make the connections of like the mark of the beast and so on with the mega hats. But it's true. Like there is this idea where whether it is a corporation or a political figure that has control or power, and there's people who are just too tired to fight it. So they just go along with it, thinking that someone else is going to fight the battle for us. And then that's how we fall into those situations like this. And movie after movie after movie has covered this topic, yet somehow people are surprised when it happens.
Well, there's certain things like, maybe something that happened maybe around a year ago, maybe didn't really happen for real. And I was outlining how I imagined that whole thing was set up. And I said, anyone who's ever seen like a handful of 70s political thrillers or paranoia films like the Pakula films would have an idea about how to put this together. Like the parallax view is not based on fantasy. You know what I mean? It is slightly, what do you call it? Heightened, but or Winter Kills. Winter Kills.
I just watched Winter Kills 2 nights ago. It's such a great
Isn't it great?
movie.
It's so good. Yeah.
The fact that John Huston tells him to hide their money in Brazil as he's falling off a building is one of my favorite endings of any movie.
And also, as you probably know, I love Tony Perkins, and it's like such a perfect Tony Perkins role that he has, especially that the character doesn't take it takes like a meager salary or something like that. Like it's just a very Calvinist kind of bizarre kind of thing. Oh, I was going to say about a guest that you've had a terrific chat with. I don't know how political the rest of his dossier is, or his resume is, or output, but certainly Trouble in Mind is in that 80s new wave kind of way, different than Repo Man, but using a lot of the signifiers of that time, like Carradine with the dyed hair and everything, but more so Divine's character being the oligarch.
Absolutely. That was one of the best parts of that conversation I had with Alan Rudolph was we were supposed to talk about Breakfast of Champions, which we did for quite a bit. And we actually went over time because he wanted to say more about Trouble in Mind. Because I'm fascinated with Keith Carradine's character of that as Coop. And my whole thing is like, at the beginning, we think that this is our hero, this is our rebel, this is our guy that we're supposed to attach ourselves to. And then he turns into this figure that just keeps getting further and further into this world of crime. And Rudolph was essentially like, yeah, he's a novel, but it's not that he's becoming the villain. He was always the villain.
Yeah.
And the nice guy was the mask. And I feel like that is kind of like the world that we've been living in for a while, is that, for example, your Stallone thing is like we've had these heroes, but the hero was the mask. And now we're seeing like who they really are. And it's upsetting for us because a lot of our lives were created and molded by masks. And I think we have a lot more disappointment than the conservative right does. They've always known who they were. They've always known who their heroes were. And we're getting more disappointments of seeing heroes that were neutral for so long, but were they really, you know?
Well, the neutral thing is strange now. Also, when you said the celebrity thing and how that warps people's minds, Bill Maher and his ilk, like Dave Chappelle and Rogan to a degree, but Rogan is like his own agent of evil at this point. They're in this cosseted bubble, and so that they don't really see. And there's an arrogance, especially with Bill Maher, that like for instance, Trump played him on that. Like
Right.
he Maher thinks that he's above the charm of the master manipulator seducer. So therefore, he's going to bring the real news to the front about how he's a good guy.
Yeah.
But in terms of the good guy being like a snake or whatever we want to call him, Stallone in particular was particularly galling, despite his incredibly jingoistic, very right-leaning films. For instance, Ted Kotcheff did not want to do Rambo First Blood Part 2 because instead of the John Rambo we knew from First Blood, he was now this war machine who kills indiscriminately instead of never killing anybody because he knows how horrible it is in the first one. And despite that, Stallone for years had lied constantly. Oh, well, I'm not political. Rambo's not a political figure. All this stuff, and it's like, what? Huh? Are you sure? Really? Because like Rambo and Rambo 3 are just about as like right wing as Red Dawn. Though we're talking about Milius, for those not familiar, Red Dawn, 1984. I'm sure you're familiar. Your audience is familiar, but that is a film that I tried with once when I was a kid, and then once a couple of years ago at the New Bev 4th of July double feature. They usually would play either Red Dawn and Rocky 4 or similar films, and I walked out. I was like, I am not. This is disgusting. Like about 40 minutes in, but then some people say, well, no, it's actually about how horrible it would be to be in a land occupied like the way the States occupies other places. And I thought, no, I don't know about that. I still think the movie sucks. So, but what do you think about that one?
I mean, so like growing up with it, you're easily manipulated by the fantasy of it, right? Could I survive as a teenager in an occupied country? Would my survival instincts kick in? And, you know, a bunch of young adult novels when I was a kid were all about survival, like, you know, My Side of the Mountain and Hatchet and stuff like that. I feel like those were meant to kind of, let's say, indoctrinate young boys' minds into a survival mindset of like, I can do this, which in the last 20 years with the digital world, that's not a thing anymore. I mean, if it is, it's militia groups, right? And that's like a whole other
the survivalists.
That's a whole other conversation. And it's something that you can appreciate in my youth, but as I've grown up and I recognize what the message is, and seeing the Milius documentary and people talking about it,
I want to see the doc. Yeah,
I definitely see the propaganda behind it, but I don't think of it as, let's say, a recruitment tool like some people do. I think that it was just trying to tell a story that leaned that way. Did it need a remake? No, it definitely did not.
I forgot that it was remade.
Yeah, no.
You know where I checked out this time? It was like they were learning to be survivalists and everything. Now, and also Harry Dean Stanton, it was clear his character was going to go.
Avenge me!
Yeah, and I thought, well, I don't need to watch this anymore. He's not. He's
gone.
Be here. Yeah, he's gone. And then they are talking about drinking the blood of an animal, and he's like, "Yeah, it's not that bad." And I went, "That's fuck this. I am out of here." You know, I hated Top Gun ever since I saw it in the theater as a kid. Hey, I still have not seen it since. I've thought about maybe rewatching it only simply because it's a Tony Scott film. But there's a lot of other movies to watch, and I just can't. I do not like anything like that. I don't like military stuff.
War. And this is something that we haven't really brought up yet in the conversation, is that like art is subjective, and you're going to take what you get out of it, whether it is the intended message the author or the creator was putting across. And this is where like I have a really kind of harsh opinion of film criticism, is that it kind of takes the subjectivity away of what the the message of a film is. Where if you're just
Yeah,
going to go in blind, you take a critic's opinion on it. That critic's opinion, I think, is really based on a where they are at politically, or what drives
sure.
them as in their need for entertainment, and how they're going to suggest it to an audience. Like, is it worth your 10-15 bucks? You know, a lot of movies I love were critically just bombasted, right? And then there's Oscar-winning films like Dances with Wolves that I cannot stand, right? So
Yeah.
I think it's okay to say art is subjective, and
Oh yeah, yeah.
you've
There's
seen my
no.
show, you know my message. I think that there like are no bad movies, in the sense that like there's always going to be someone that appreciates a movie even if I think it's dog shit, and that's
Yeah,
okay. And that's why like I try to stay away from like being a critic a critic podcast. And that's what Back in the Balcony is about. Like Justin Henson, my co-host, he's a critic. I am a defender of creativity, and that's what makes the conversations exciting. Now, if the creativity doesn't tickle my fancy, I'm going to say, okay, Carnosaur's not a good movie, but God damn it, it cost $850,000, and look what they did with it. Like, that's where I come from.
and also I haven't seen Carnosaur, but there's no way it's better than Cop and a Half. I'm a huge fan of that.
Cop and a Half
Philip
is
Duke
great.
is actually going to be doing that on my show. Other people I suggested it to refused to watch it, and I said, "You don't know what you're missing here." But anyway,
You don't.
legendary
um,
fight on the show. Yeah, but okay. So let's talk about Siskel and Ebert and
yeah, please.
their personal tastes and biases, as we all have. So Gene was such a prude in certain ways, but then such a licentious old creep in others. Like Blame It on Rio, he found charming, but
We did
Crimes
that
with
on the show.
Passion and Body Double, he was like, oh, clutching his pearls. So there's a weird sort of strange thing that definitely guided his hand with that. Roger, of course, being a much more libertarian, or not libertarian. What is the word? Libertine
Okay.
is the word. But anyway,
Yeah.
that's one, because I considered that to be political. As part of, I think that is political as well. Your views on the handling of sexuality, because that leads into, of course, women's rights, gay rights, agency, and all that. And also, yeah, there is no non-objective film criticism. How can there be? I mean, that would be then saying, well, it's a good length for this sort of thing, and the color is strong. It is color. There's lots of words. I mean, I don't know what you would say.
If you were
What is
only allowed to talk about the technical aspects of filmmaking instead of what the film is actually about, that makes me laugh.
that? Wouldn't that'd be an interesting one, right? Because also, what are you going to do if the theater has bad sound? Yeah, you're
Right.
going to give a bad impression to lots of people.
What are you going to do with a found footage movie?
Yeah, exactly. Um, But for some other political movies, one I was thinking of that I haven't seen in ages, and this was a very kind of not common film in the 80s, but this type of movie, espionage, No Way Out. I
Mhm.
haven't seen it in forever. I don't remember the plot, and I don't want to be reminded, no offense, but I just know that there's military involved. Iman is in it, and it was very exciting, and it sort of made Kevin Costner's career to a degree.
Yeah, I think the 80s, one of the things I think is fascinating about the 80s is that it was such a glitzy decade for film, that look at Don Simpson movies, right? And Jerry Bruckheimer movies. You could put any kind of bullshit in that movie, but as long as it was big, loud, and flashy, people
Yeah.
ate it up. And then Michael Bay kind of took the reins from that, right?
Hmm.
And now we look at movies like that as like, oh, that was such a thing of the 80s or early 90s. That's so cliche with all these explosions and blah blah blah. But people forget is that when movies were at their most profitable, it was during that time. It's what got
Yeah.
people into theaters. It's what got people to upgrade their home stereo systems. It wasn't the Miramax generation that made
Right.
the theatrical experience big. So that's where I do get in discourses and debates with people about like, you can't poo poo on that, because if it wasn't for that, you would not have the films of today, because it essentially built the frameworks of we're going to build multiplexes. We're going
Yeah,
to
that's true.
we're going to put a different one every 5 miles from your suburban home, so you have the opportunity. And again, that's where when we have these conversations with people, there is a pretentiousness to, well, I only watch these films. It's like, you can only watch those films, but there has to be at least some kind of appreciation for how we got here.
Yeah, and honestly, any current film, whatever era it is, I tend to, if something's talked about endlessly, I still haven't seen Get Out. I'm sure I would like it. I've heard so much about it. I've heard so many plot details
Mhm.
that I think, okay, that sounds like a great movie. But now I've heard so much about it, I don't know if I really care to find out if there's any mystery at all left for me. I'm sure it's a very well executed film, and that I would like it. But it's way down on my list. I'd much rather see something that I don't know about. Something that was kind of a political thriller, actually. Last Embrace, I just saw for the first time recently.
Oh, the Demi movie.
Yeah, with Roy Scheider and John Glover, and
He karate chops Mandy Patinkin, I think.
yes, and coming up later in the year, I love when Roy Scheider does a move like that. Later in the year, 52 Pickup Movie Club, and I got to
Yeah.
chat with John Glover. So,
Oh, that's cool.
but I hadn't seen Last Embrace, so I completely forgot that they were in a movie beforehand together. But it doesn't matter; it's not really the point. But golly, is Roy Tan. But that is a great example of a political thriller. But I think I went off from what you were saying. Yeah, the oh, I know. It was because I'd rather just grab something and not know what it is. But, like the big blockbuster time, but also there was a lot of these big action movies. Even, No Way Out, you wouldn't say it was a blockbuster. You wouldn't say it was full of, maybe there might have been an explosion. I don't know. But there'd be these tense thrillers, a lot of thrillers, basically. We don't really have any current modern ones, unless I'm mistaken.
I mean, we're going to see. I mean, I thought Eddington was definitely a
Oh,
thriller.
okay.
And then
Yeah.
the new PTA movie coming out looks like we're going to be that. I'd love to see a reintroduction of that genre too. And
I love thrillers.
I think that's like thrillers and erotic thrillers. They tried with that Ben Affleck Anna de Armas movie. It was terrible, but I do want to see the return of like a good old fashioned erotic thriller. Maybe we need
Same
it as a
here.
distraction, right?
Yeah, well, I went to one of the marathons that I loved a lot that I went to. I love the horror marathons, but Brain Dead and on Fairfax in LA did a 16 millimeter erotic thriller marathon.
Mhm.
It was fantastic.
Yeah,
There was one ridiculous. What's the ridiculous movie with like face swapping and Tom Berenger? I mean, it is ludicrous. Shattered. It might have been Shattered.
Oh, it is Shattered. You're right. It is Shattered. 100% is Shattered.
It is ludicrous and it's so fun, and it was great to see a full audience like when the ridiculous twists happen. But anyway, but back to the political thing. What are a few of your favorite ones that like you return to?
Let's go ahead and like finish off this conversation, at least with me on this aspect, because I
Yeah.
just talked about it on my last episode of the Cultworthy, where we were talking about favorite films of the years that we were born with me and my
Okay.
co-host. And when I got to 1987, I think RoboCop is slept on in the aspect of, yes, it was definitely a metaphor for the Reagan era, for mass consumption, for corporations taking things over, consumerism with the commercials. And I think all of that we are seeing a repeat of right now. The fact that
Yeah.
we are talking about Palantir and smart cities and organized crises and manufactured terror and
Yeah.
let's say terrorist forces by our own government that are going into cities and disrupting just so we can modify the city, whether it's burning down houses to build mass housing for people that is owned by a big corporation, or artificial intelligence in our police force and all that stuff, smart cities. RoboCop has it all.
It's got it all. Yeah, you can't argue with RoboCop. It is a phenomenal movie. It's so well made. Even if you didn't know it was political, I don't know if I did. Of course, when it came out, I was 11, but I loved it. And again, it's a Verhoeven movie with lots of layers to it. He doesn't do anything that doesn't have some kind of commentary in it.
Exactly.
Showgirls, of course, legendarily misunderstood. But but also you can watch it in the other way, which is like just as a campy movie. My year's a pretty good year. 1976, All the President's Men and Marathon Man. So
Marathon Man's on my
hard
list
to
too.
beat those two. Yeah. What's that?
Marathon Man was on my list too. To
Nice.
discuss,
Another
for
Roy
sure.
Scheider movie.
Yeah.
So
And as we are kind of going into this, let's say, kind of proto-Orwellian phase of existence in this country,
mhm.
I was thinking about Carpenter loved that stuff. They Live and The Thing. The Thing is definitely more about, McCarthyism, who's who, what are you doing?
Yeah.
They
Yeah,
Live.
yeah.
They Live is on the border of the same thing as like, are we being controlled by mass media? Yes, we are. Are there people that are going to resist? Yes, there are. And what's the future going to be? I don't know. And that literally bleeds right into like the 1984 V for Vendetta and Children of Men aesthetic, where it's like, okay, now we are a dystopian society,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
every day we see it closer and closer. The second I saw those cages pop up, man, in Florida, and I was just thinking about the
Oh, yeah.
refugee scenes in all three of those movies, I'm like, oh man, we're here. We're literally here.
No, I know that so many films have scenes that were brought to mind with all that news. And then, of course, the new executive order, which just opens up the potential for many, many other people to be put in similar facilities. I saw someone comment online. They were like, "That don't be ridiculous. They don't have all those facilities. There's not enough facilities to put the mentally ill in." And I went, "Yeah, well, yeah, okay, sure."
Facilities is a word used lightly for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Facilities, I mean, however you want to define it. Also 76 network, of course. So a very good year for that. Oh, we were talking about The Blacklist, Guilty by Suspicion.
Yes.
I strongly recommend anyone out there who hasn't seen it. Robert De Niro plays a blacklisted screenwriter, and it's the only directorial effort by legendary producer Irwin Winkler, who did a ton of Scorsese movies.
And this is something I could talk about all day, but I really wanted to get like the hits out there, and I feel like we got them.
Yeah, definitely.
Craig, there's something I have to say just about you and your guests, and that is, I feel that you make it feel safe for me to have my opinions and watch your show and watch the people you bring on, because I live in a very conservative state.
That's true. Yeah.
Where I don't
Yeah.
get to be with, see, or have exposure or conversations with people that exist in other states in this country, but I feel like they are afraid to exist the way they want to exist in this state. Now, I live in Salt Lake City, so I live in the bluest part of the state. And yes, we do have a very progressive mayor. We have a very progressive DA and council. But at the same time, leaving the city is always a question mark. There's parts of the state where I feel like I'm driving through Deliverance, right? And
Sure.
that
Yeah.
is something that's always been, and I've never been afraid of being brown, even though I speak
Yeah.
no Spanish, but I am part Mexican. I've never been afraid of being brown until now. But then
I can imagine. Yeah.
I watch shows like yours and the people you talk to, and then of course us having conversations either online in person, and it's soothing to know that like I'm not alone in this.
No, you're
world.
not.
And
Yeah.
I think that's what people who are having a lot of anxiety and despair right now feel. They feel like they're alone because they don't have people like them around.
Sure.
And that's where I do encourage them to like watch movies and learn from
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
Movies are history, and I think that is something that the powers that be are trying to control. They're trying to control the history, they're trying to control the art, and they're trying to control the music, because it kills the soul when those things go away. And that goes back to that Vonnegut quote. It's like, your soul can't grow if you don't have these things in your life. And once the soul dies, you're easier to control. And that's why we keep having to do stuff like this. So there is a voice out there.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Antonio. It really means a lot. And I love your show and appreciate what you're doing, and the fact that you keep at it, even though you're in, it's very easy to have your physical surrounding. I mean, not the movies that you're around, of course, but where you're living sort of infiltrate your mind in because you're out and about in it every day. So the fact that you are continuing, despite walking outside and not being like, oh, I can't talk to them about Sidney Lumet.
Yeah, right. It's true.
Is it Lumet or Lumet? I always thought it was Lumet.
I've heard it both ways, and just like we were talking about, who was in the Valentino movie, Nureyev, where we couldn't.
Nureyev. I was wrong. I was totally wrong. I was completely wrong, and I felt after we hung up, I was like, oh man, I was completely wrong. Where did I get that from? Yeah. So anyway, we'll say it both ways. We'll say it Sidney Nureyev. That's how we say it. Anyway, I really appreciate what you said, though. Thank you.
Yeah, no, for sure, man. Like, again, and I just hope you keep doing this, regardless of where you are in the world. International man of mystery.
Well,
thank you for taking
Same
the
to you.
time.
Same to you. Same to you, Antonio. And thank you very much for having me on this very special political episode.
Absolutely. So this will be out with like in a week of how we're recording. Based on what you've got kind of stockpiled, what can we expect from Craig and Friends in the near future?
In the very near future, there is a movie club with Rich Johnson from Rich Pieces. He does lots of essays and articles and other written things that a writer would do about all kinds of films for 101, Second Sight,
Mhm.
Fangoria. You name it, he's probably written for them or created them. And you can check out his site just at Rich Pieces. And he joined me for a long chat about Abel Ferrara's Fear City, and that's coming out soon. And then I have a chat with these filmmakers who made a film called Fantasy A Gets a Mattress. That's worth having a look at. They're new young filmmakers, very indie, very low budget. And then a couple other things. As I said, later in the year, 52 Pickup, To Live and Die in LA. And then there's an exciting guest coming that I can't mention yet because of superstition purposes. Other than that, there'll be some solo episodes and some things about some exciting life changes that are coming.
Well, that's great. And once again, whenever you have a slot open in Craig and Friends, give me a call. I know Phil's waiting too. We're just like, all right, Craig, we're ready. We're ready and willing.
It's been a lot of higgledy-piggledy and juggling this last 6 to 12 months. So now things are going to be able to schedule a little bit better.
Thank you for listening, watching. Please like, rate, review, subscribe to my YouTube channel and wherever you find podcasts. And please go find Craig and Friends. I'd say Instagram is probably where like you're most active.
I think so, yeah. I've been meaning to do more Blue Sky, but you know, the heart wants, I guess what the heart wants. At Craig and Friends Pod. And then just search me on YouTube, on the podcast apps, and there'll be links in this thing. And yeah, subscribe, rate, and review, even if you haven't heard it, because you just know it's the right thing to do.
It is the right thing to do. You'll be doing yourself and the world a favor.
That's right.
All right, Craig. I'll talk to you later, man. Good to see you.
Cheers, Antonio. Thanks again. Okay, bye-bye.